tick tock. If I could have my wasted days back, would I use them to get back? Do I have the strength to know how I'll go? Can I find it inside you till what I should know? To get back on track. Pray tick, 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 tock. 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 Pray tick, 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 tock.
Jesus Christ, that was a weird ass dream. But anyway, we're here to talk about some music. We have less albums to get through, luckily, in letter C. I realized after editing for hours and hours on end that I need to get to the fucking point. So we're just gonna start off right away. We're gonna start with a pretty fun split. This is Splatterhash with Ghoul and Cannibal Corpse. I'm a pretty big fan of Cannibal Corpse. I think Two Above the Resonated is one of those albums that really stuck out to me. I think that was the first one I ever heard, but I personally not a fan of Cannibal Corpse on this split in particular. The Ghoul tracks, Inner Sanctum and Spill Your Guts, are really fun, catchy, groovy, fun, thrash punk kind of metal songs. But weirdly enough, I don't like Ghoul's full-length material, so this one's a mixed bag, but the split itself is fun, and I like the cover art a lot. I mean, you can't just not love that. I like how there's like the Ghoul figures there, and then you have like the bongs with the skeletons. It's a good mix. Moving on from Cannibal Corpse, we're gonna get right into Cannibal Corpse. I have a few CDs from them. This one I got completely fucking schemed, so I bought Butchered at Birth. I forget where, but I did purchase Butchered at Birth, or what I thought was Butchered at Birth. And then I listened to the album and I thought, you know, this doesn't sound like Butchered at Birth at all. And I realized I wasn't listening to it because Eaten Back to Life was in the fucking case instead of Butchered at Birth. So I got completely scammed, so I'm pretty sad about that. So I guess Eaten Back to Life is a fun, great album. I can't believe I got fucking scammed. Then we have Kill, not a highlight in their career, but still a decent death metal album. And we have A Skeletal Domain. This album fucking slaps. I love pretty much every track off of this thing, and it's so relentless. I mean, Cannibal Corpse is pretty relentless, but this album especially I really like. I also really want to purchase Red Before Black, which came out after this one. Yeah, I'm a pretty big CC fan. Then we have some slam death metal, another split coming your way. That is this one right here, and if that cover art offends you, then you clearly haven't explored a lot of slam. This includes the bands Cannibalistic Infancy, Interminable Corruptions, and Myocardial Infarction. Yeah, it's like, you know, bare bones slam death metal. Really nothing to write home about here, but it's fun. Then we have an even more offensive cover, and I do kind of have to give a trigger warning for this one because it is pretty fucking messed. But this is a gore grind band called Cannibe with an EP called Are You Disgusted? And yeah, you tell me if you're disgusted with that. I'm just gonna let that sit there for a bit so you can really take it in. I honestly got this for the cover. I mean, I saw this somewhere on YouTube and I thought like, wow, that's terrible. I need to have that. Then we have a group that is very near and dear to my heart and very influential for my death metal discovery journey, and that is the band Carcass. I have their album Heartwork over here, a classic, pretty much pioneered a lot of the melodic death metal that we hear today. And we have Surgical Steel, which blew my fucking mind when this album came out. Surgical Steel is such a great combination of, like, you know, melodic death metal, but in that Carcass style. There's thrash elements in there, but just the groove and the pacing and the song structure, it's really dense and so well written. Honestly, I'm not sure what they're gonna do on their next album that's coming out soon, but I'm really excited for it. My favorite track would have to be Unfit for Human Consumption. That is an absolute banger. Then I want to give a warm shout out to the fellow guys of Carnation. This is their EP right here. Yeah, Cemetery of the Insane. This was once again brought to my attention by Mr. Infidel Amsterdam, as a lot of these are, because he has pretty good taste when it comes to old school death metal, I'd say. Yeah, so 5 tracks, came out through Final Gate Records. I really like the groove on this thing. It has great songwriting, especially Explosive Cadavers has this cool like vocal line that they use in the chorus. Yeah. It's a really fun old school death metal EP. Then we have a classic band out of Colombia, and this is one of my favorite examples of Colombian death metal or even brutal death metal. Other than like maybe Inquisition or Witch Trap, these guys really come to mind when I think of Colombia. And that is Carnivore Diprosopus with, I gotta read this off here, Filled My Stomach with a Pregnant Corpse. This album is raw, it's shredding, it's relentless, and it's really filthy. I'm a big fan of the production choices here. They really add that extra grit to it. If you want to check out some cool Colombian brutal death metal, if you're just getting into it, then I would highly recommend this band. Their other albums are even better as they went on. Their most recent album, I forget when that came out, it was a few years ago, but that one is fucking kick-ass. So yeah, Carnivore Diprosopus is a great Colombian band. Now I want to give a very big shout out to some more, not quite local, but these guys do hail from the great land of Kitchener. And I am talking about Cathartic Demise. This is their self-titled debut EP. Cathartic Demise is so fucking kick-ass. Essentially, the best way I could describe it is like melodic death thrash, maybe. 3 songs on here, Liberty, The Vice, and Solar Returning. They're all really dense tracks. There's a lot of effort that was put into actually composing the music and making it varied. There's a lot of switch-ups in the tempo and the time signatures, which makes a very chaotic experience, but it's also controlled in a sense that they really have a sense of flow to the music, and each track very nicely transitions into the next, and which is a lot to accomplish for just an EP with 3 songs on it. Next up we have a band that I'm a little iffy about, at least recently. I was not a fan of their recent material, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. We have some albums from Decapitation of the Cattle, The Harvest Floor, which is a good introduction into what their sound would sort of become. This like progressive grindcore death metal kind of combo. Yeah, it's a decent album. I haven't listened to this in a while, so I can't really remember exactly some tracks off of it. My first Cattle Decapitation album was The Monolith of Inhumanity. I remember jamming to this back in like, I don't even know, grade 9 or whatever. I thought it was completely insane, and it totally ruined my Minecraft gameplay when I was playing it. I especially love the song Lifestalker because it has that sort of melodic, clean, I don't know if you could call what Travis Ryan does clean vocals, but it has that interlude with like, you know, and of course we have their magnum opus, the Anthropocene Extinction. First of all, that art is fucking cool. But further than that, this album is simply in-fucking-credible. Every song on here is truly a masterpiece, but if you really want me to pick some favorites, I'm gonna have to go with Clandestine Ways, Plagueborn, Mammals in Babylon, and Apex Blasphemy are just a few to name. However, I was not a big fan of the new album that came out because to me, it took everything that this album did well, which is the great songwriting, the various layers that were on top of each other that made this album into this like epic, grandiose experience, and it just kind of boiled it down to this mechanical, like it's not Cattle to me. I really didn't fuck with the new album, but some people liked it. So, you know, if you like that album, then that's a-okay. Then we have another pickup from C-Jam Radio. This time we have Cell with Ancient Incantations of Xarbos. This is an interesting album. It kind of involves a few genres at once. You got some symphonic black metal going on, some technical death metal maybe, or maybe not death metal. It's a technical symphonic black. Ugh, I hate these genres so much. But yeah, it's a very enthralling experience, you could say. There's a lot going on in this album. I don't want to spoil too much because it was a nice surprise for me when I heard it. But yeah, we have Cell. Then we have some more slam death metal. This one's truly a classic, and I think one that turned on a lot of people for a lot of the slam that we hold dear to our hearts today. And that is Cerebral Incubation with Asphyxiating on Excrement. Yeah, this record is fucking hilarious. And I say hilarious for a few reasons, because this album actually works with a lot of humor when it comes to the samples. There's a few samples on here that just really... they really hit you in the feels, you know? They're very deep and personal. But yeah, other than that, the songwriting's good. I think these guys have a good groove to them. You know, as far as slam death metal goes, this is pretty much a prime example of how to make it very nice. But yeah, Cerebral Incubation is a must-have for any slam fan. Next up, we have a album from Chapel of Disease, and this is Mysterious Ways of Repetitive Art. This record is death metal, but it's really unlike any other kind of death metal you ever heard in your life. It has a very raw atmosphere to it, and I think that's kind of the key word here, atmosphere, because each track, and there's only 7 of them, they serve their own purpose in this like storyline that they've created. In this album, and it's very, very intriguing. The atmosphere is slow in parts, and it builds up to really fast segments, and then it slows down again, and there's like there's a lot going on in each song. So I really have nothing else to say other than this is a must-have in any death metal fan's collection. Once again, this was released through the fucking gods of old school death metal, FDA Records. Also, I really like how the first song is called The Mysterious Ways, and then the last song is called Of Repetitive Art. And if you actually put these 2 tracks together, they do form into one single track, which is really cool. Then we have another release from my friends at Neckbreaker Records, and this time we have an EP that came out through the German Titans Chasing Death. This is their debut release over here. It's called Deathbringer. I wish I could say more about this EP than what I'm looking at, but to be honest, there's not a lot to really like praise in terms of like, oh, they tried something different. This is very unique in a sense. This is traditional old school German style death metal. And if you like that, then you're definitely gonna get a kick out of it. I will say though that the song We Are All Zero is extremely catchy, and that's actually important because you do want your debut EP to be catchy and memorable, not just kind of like a basic demonstration of what you can do as a band. So they did manage to nail that part. And I'm not sure if they're writing more material, but I'd expect it to come out through Neckbreaker as well, and I'm very excited to hear more from them. Then we have a group from the UK, actually, and this is an album that I fucking love so goddamn much. This is Cruciamentum with Carnal or Charnel. I'm not good at English.
It's carnal.
Carnal? Mm-hmm. Okay. The record is absolutely fantastic. It's got really good groove, and the raw atmosphere really adds a lot to it. I think that the songwriting is both furious and ominous at the same time, something that's pretty difficult to achieve. Then I picked up 2 releases from our next band named Chikatilo, and this is their EP right here. There's not a lot to say about this EP, not a lot of interesting things going on except for the song Nameless, and that's because we have some really fantastic guest vocals from Mr. Jason of Putrefied J, which was cool. But the real one that hit home for a lot of people was their debut album Lost. That is this one right here. And we have a lot of cool features on this one as well. Butcher of Rostov has Andrew of Epicardiectomy, Forrest Kump has Jonathan Neal of Parasitic Ejaculation, and Mother Russia has Jason Evans of fucking Ingested? What? This isn't really a band that is talked about a lot these days. I think the features kind of boosted it up a little bit more than it should have, because to be honest, this record is a little bit bland. It's not terrible. If you're into the slam and hardcore combination, like a Cranius for example, then you might get a kick out of it. But there's a few songs that are pretty catchy. There's a few that could have just been completely fucking left out in the first place. Yeah, I'm not really sure. But they did include a lot of stickers when I ordered this, so that's cool at least. And the name is interesting too. So Chikatilo is named after a very famous serial killer from either Ukraine or Russia, I think he was. So that's where that comes from. Now, finally, I get to talk about one of my favorite groups ever, and this is really one of the only albums that I have in my collection that have any kind of like metalcore in it. I'm not like huge on the metalcore sound, but I do like me some metalcore here and there. And of course I am talking about Chimaira. Yes, Chimaira is the fucking toots. Chimaira has a sound that I can best describe as thrash metal, groove metal, layered on top of a metalcore basis. But no matter what box you put them in, they're still a kick-ass fucking band. The Impossibility of Reason I did pick up a bit later into my Chimaira hype, because the first album I ever checked out from them was their self-titled. And let me tell you, the self-titled Chimaira album is absolutely fucking mind-blowing. This shit is awesome. It's pretty much like my go-to album when I go to the gym. Every song on here just really pumps you up full of energy. Nothing Remains, Inside the Horror, Comatose, Salvation is really good as well. Yeah, this shit is just incredible. I mean, I really can't say anything bad about it. And I liked it so much that I saw a alternative copy of it too, so I have that in my collection. There's an extra CD here with some bonus tracks, and I was very disappointed with the bonus tracks. They are called, let me just find them here, Claydon and Malignant, and they're just fucking bad. But if you can get over that, tracks 3 to 9 on the bonus CD are live songs from previous albums that they did, and the live shit is really good. Now we have a kick-ass album from Australia. This is Christ Dismembered, mate.
Crikey!
Christ Dismembered is a black metal group that I saw on Instagram originally, and they're pretty active on their Instagram, so I decided to give them a listen when they followed me, as usually that usually how that experience goes on Instagram. And I was pleasantly surprised, actually. They didn't have a lot like of material or anything, they just had this album as far as I can tell. This is your typical blasphemous, Christ fucking, Jesus smashing, cross impaling black metal. Blasphemous as hell, just how I like it. It's pretty speedy as well, so I do enjoy that quite a bit. I will say though that the writing on this thing, the songwriting, is more akin to a lot of like death metal song structure than black metal. So I think that they really need to hone in on their sound, and I think they did, because an EP that they released is a lot more, you know, cult sounding. So yeah, but this is still a kick-ass record to pick up if they still have it there. I'm not sure. Next up, we have a EP that is not related to metal in any way, shape, or form. This is a ambient project out of the States called City of Dawn, and this is their EP Nobody Nowhere. This stuff is pretty personal to me. I listened to this in a pretty dark time in my life, and it did kind of comfort me in that moment. Each song on here is just a beautiful composition of ambient, and there's some like hints of post-rock in there as well. The songs are pretty lengthy, but they do really just kind of wrap you around in a warm blanket and make you feel nice. Also, the cover does remind me of a place near my own house, so where I would go to kind of relieve stress. So yeah, just a really nice EP from City of Dawn. Then we have a group that I really need to get more of, and I'm pretty disappointed in myself that I don't have more albums from them, but this is Cobalt with Jinn. This record is fucking awesome. It's, I mean, I guess you could say it's black metal. It is black metal. I mean, I don't really see what else it could be, but it does have a very unique style to it. I think Cobalt really has this theme of like pushing the limits of what black metal can be. The song structures are very strange on here. This is like a very esoteric sounding kind of album. Moving forth, this album was bundled in a Hell's Headbangers release for free. I got this completely for free, and I'm glad I did. This is Coffin Lust with Manifestation of Inner Darkness, and that is this beautiful gem right over here. Nothing much to say. It's pretty much your standard raw shredding old school death metal with some hints of black metal thrown in there as well. Then we have an album that it doesn't happen too often that music generally terrifies me. I think I'm pretty used to a lot of the strange and spooky sounds that come out of the metal world, but this record really pushed my limits and it really pushed my sanity. It's really good, don't get me wrong, but this isn't something that you play too often. This is Coma with Phantomsmierch. I'm struggling to describe this to you right now. It's really difficult to pinpoint a specific genre here because these guys borrow from pretty much everything. There's moments that they do have little hints of death metal here and there, some different like variants on sludge as well, but I think the core of this album is a vicious, pummeling, destructive, and completely suffocating version of doom metal and black metal simultaneously. These guys have a knack for really just putting you in a dark place, and the vocals are just these wretched, pained fucking shrieks. They're full of agony and torture. Yeah, this one really just tested me, and it kind of hit me deep. So if you're a person that has any sort of experiences with depression or with any sort of mental illness, then this album is for you if you really want something that relates to that perfectly. It's a visceral experience, I'll just say that. Moving forward, another CJAM radio pickup. This is Concrete Funeral with Ultimum Judicum. Yeah, this is a nice little thrash metal album. It's pretty fun. Then we have some Windsor classics, and I'm very excited to talk about this band. I know a few of the guys that played in the next group here, and they have mixed feelings about how the recording process went for some of these albums, but to me personally, I think they're really great examples of brutal death metal, and it's awesome that we have this coming out from Windsor, because Windsor really doesn't have a lot of death metal, especially brutal death metal, but I am talking, of course, about Corprophemia. This is their first album, Arrived in Pieces. It's pretty raw and slammy. A lot of stuff that you can enjoy out of this record for sure. And the next one is Abhorogenesis. That's this one over here. Pretty different, I think, than the first one. I think the first one was focused on just kind of basic brutal death metal and slam combos. This one tried to be it's hard to describe. I mean, essentially they wanted to be more technical in a way. I'm not sure if that completely worked out for them because a lot of the songs here are a little bit of a mess, but it's not a bad album. And then we have a split that they did with a few bands here. Let me just read them off to you. Gape, Cuff, Urethral Injection, and Infected Cadaver. And that is this split right here. This is Quintessential Volumes of Brutality. Now, all three of these were released through the same label, and that is, of course, CDN Records, the gods of Canadian brutal death metal. How can you ever forget CDN Records? They're so good. I'm not even going to say anything for this one, but one word. Creed! Creed is the best band that ever came out, ever. This is the best fucking music that you'll ever listen to in your whole life. Weathered is a musical masterpiece, and if you don't like Creed, you can literally go die. Next up, we have a release from Necroharmonic, which is a really cool label that releases a lot of like old school gems and that one Waking the Cadaver album. But this is Crematory with Denial. I'm pretty sure this is a Swedish group. I don't want to get that wrong, but they were essentially one of those like proto death metal bands that were playing like death thrash, but not quite death metal yet. All I can say is just some really raw, catchy death metal. Everything on this thing is fucking kick-ass, so pick this up if you can. They also have this on vinyl if you want to try that out. So yeah, Crematory Denial. Don't be in denial. get it. And we have Church of Disgust with Veneration of Filth, just a really dense, crushing death metal experience here. I just have nothing to say about this other than you have to fucking get it, because man, this stuff is really, really fucking good. Big fan of Church of Disgust. Then we have another release from Hell's Headbangers. This is one of those blackened thrash metal bands, I guess you could say. This is Crucified Mortals with Psalms of the Dead Choir, and that is this CD over here. Just some kick-ass fucking thrash. Nothing else to say. I do quite enjoy the fourth song, Ominous. Oh god, I can't read that. What kind of font is this, bro? Do you really expect me to understand what this even means? That's more undiscernible than the fucking logo, and I thought the logo was supposed to be the part that's hard to understand. Then we have a CD from Invictus Productions, which is another great label that releases a lot of like death and black metal combos kind of stuff. Very brutal like shit like war metal and things like that. And this is a great example of that. Crurifragium with Beast of the Temple of Satan. This is a fantastic combo of black metal and death metal coming together in a savage, pummeling way. If you've ever listened to a band like Blasphemy, for example, it's pretty much right up your alley, and I'm a huge fan of this release. I also kind of find it funny that when you open this up, like, you know, you have all this like brutal imagery here, but then you open up the thing, you take the CD out, and it's like this nice horizon, pretty like band photo. Like, I don't know if that fits or not, but I don't know. I think it's cool, to be honest. But yeah, Crurifragium is kick-ass. We are nearing the end here, just a few more to go. Next up we have Cruz with Culto Abismal. This is another record that I picked up from Neckbreaker Records, although it was released through Self-Made God. This is just some very, very awesome, groovy, old school death metal. But I do have to say one thing about this album. It really has no... there's no distinction between any of the songs here. So you could literally play this, it would play all the way through, and you would feel like you're listening to one song. If you're into the sound that they have, and if you can listen to it for 40 minutes, then this is an album for you. I'm one of those people, luckily, so I'm able to enjoy this CD. Then we have a classic from Canada, and I'm really disappointed in myself that I don't have more from these guys, but this is sadly all I was able to get my hands on so far. Cryptopsy with None So Vile. I love that art, by the way. It's really cool. I mean, I know they didn't make it themselves, it's an actual painting, but it really fits with the whole vibe of this record. I mean, what am I supposed to say about Cryptopsy that hasn't been said already? It's some of the most visceral, insane, pummeling, fucking technical, brutal death metal that you've ever heard in your life. I think the highlight for this album is the vocals from Mr. Lord Worm. He does a great job in delivering some of the most filthy vocal performances I have ever heard in a death metal album. This record's basically perfect. I fucking love it. It's my favorite Cryptopsy album, no doubt. Well, maybe Whisper Supremacy. Moving on with some Polish pride here, we have Cult Des Ghoules with Henbane. If you haven't heard of Cult Des Ghoules, they're a very, very interesting black metal project. I think Poland in general has a lot of black metal that can be described as weird or out there, non-traditional. This is definitely an example of that. These guys have a very varied catalog of music, and each album is a little bit different. I think this one follows a more traditional black metal structure, which is saying a lot for a band like Cult Des Ghoules. But yeah, Henbane is just kick-ass. You can get it cheap on Hell's Headbangers, so I would highly recommend to get this record. This I'm not going to talk about much. This is Cold, not Chilled, as I called it before. But yeah, this is the reincarnation of Bestier. So yeah, I already talked about this. And the last CD, so you don't have to stare at my stupid face anymore, is Cut Up with Forensic Nightmares. Holy shit, is this good. So I know a lot of people cried, I did as well, when Vomitory decided to call it quits. I'm not sure what happened, but the members of Vomitory formed a new band called Cut Up, and this is just, I mean, man, this is really how you make death metal. It is relentless. Like, every song on here, there's no breathers. Like, it just keeps fucking going, keeps pounding you. and it's just a fucking onslaught. I love the whole vibe of this album. It is just continuously brutal for all of time. Every song in here is good. The first song though, Enter Hell, is really, really fucking cool. It just like starts you off into a complete frenzy. And that is my CD collection, letter C. I'm glad I didn't have to split this one up, but I hope you enjoyed what I had to say about each album I presented to you. Maybe you'll check them out. I'm gonna put tags in the description as I always do, so you can go like their Facebook page, buy some music, whatever you want to do. I would also encourage you to like this video and put a like on my page. If you want to see more, make sure you're following me so you get every single update that I post. I also want you to stay strong in the quarantine. I know we're pretty far into it right now, and it's not easy for anybody, even not for me, even though I have a lot to do, clearly. But yeah, I just want you guys to stay safe and be smart. Don't be fucking dumb, because they need to revive our shows. We need shows, okay? This is not good. This is fucking brutal. I hate this shit. Anyway, I wish you guys a fantastic day, and I will see you on the flip side.